But then they didn't, they had to.
I want to welcome the board members and everyone here that's attending this joint meeting of the USDB Board and the USDB Advisory Council. We don't have a full quorum here, but we've got some board members, at least one that I know of, that will get us to the full quorum. Just trying to find some. Oh, there we go. We have a full quorum. So I want to call this meeting to order. We'll hit some introductions. Board Member Bolter, there's lunch there too. So maybe we get through the introduction.
Lisa's there too. She's
Flip over there.
lunch.
Okay.
Board Member Lisa Thomas.
So maybe what would be best is I'll start with my board, and we'll start with Board Member Bolter, and we'll come around this way, and then we'll go around the. Yeah, I'll do my board first.
Okay. Michelle Bolter from District 15.
And we do have a mic.
Lisa Ellis, District 12.
And I'm Mark Huntsman, Chair, and I'm from District 14.
I'm Lorraine Austin. I'm the board secretary.
I Linda Hanson, District 3, which is most of West Valley, Magna, all of Tooele County, and all of Juab County.
Well, if we're going to do all the counties, then I'll take most of this meeting explaining my jurisdiction, but go ahead.
I just didn't know if
I'm
you were 3
just
was.
teasing you.
I'm Terrell Warner, and I represent District 1, which is all of northern Utah.
Jennifer Gravitt, District 4, Davis County, most of Davis County, and Weaver County.
And I'm Salt Lake. First I'm Carol Lear, and then I represent Salt Lake City and Park City.
Kathleen Weaving, District 10. I'm in Cottonwood Heights, Sandy, Draper, and pretty much all of Canyon School District.
I'm Lisa Cummins. I am with District 11, Southwest Valley, Riverton, Harriman, South Jordan, and a little bit down to Fairfield in Utah County.
Yep.
Okay. I think we all know you, Superintendent, but should we get to the advisory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go this way.
I'm Sterling Hilton. I'm a parent representative for Deaf and Blind.
I'm Bill Clapp, retired Weaver State University and U.S. Air Force on the USDB Council.
I'm Philippe Montalet. I represent the deaf community.
My name is Jared Olivest. I'm an attorney. I represent the hard of hearing community out here.
I'm Sandra Golding, and I'm USDB deafblind.
Karen Herrick, and I represent Karen Herrick.
Karen actually is the chair over the advisory committee.
Go ahead, Carl.
Carl Lempe, the finance director for USDB.
And I am Susan Patton, and I'm actually the Director of Deafblind Services at USDB, but I am representing Carol Lassiter, who is at the APH conference. She's kind of a big deal back there, so it's something that she has to attend. So.
You want to introduce yourself? Yeah.
I'm Michelle Tanner. I'm the Associate Superintendent of the Deaf here at USDP.
So I have a microphone. I'll introduce some of our guests at the back table. Sid Dixon is here, who's our state chief. Susan Thomas, to her left, is our communications director. Scott Jones is an apostate former staff member here at USDB. And Emily is here, communications from USDB. I can't see.
She's job shadowing.
know me, yeah.
She's Amy. She's job shadowing.
This is
Oh, awesome.
Amy.
Hi, Amy. Nice to have you
She's a
here.
sped teacher from Tooele.
Okay, fantastic. We're glad you're here.
Karen Borg.
And Karen Borg is hiding behind Bill Clapp. Back Karen is the director of our blind fit services. And Brian, hi there. Brian's the illustrious attorney for all of us, right, from the Attorney General's office. And Susie Blackham, one of our educators as well. Okay, I think I got everyone in the room.
Okay. Well, we got through the. We do have a quorum, which is great. Appreciate the board members. They had a committee meeting that apparently was went longer than anticipated. We're glad that they pushed the water to the end of the row and got things taken care of, and glad that they're here. Thank you for the introductions. The first order of business is the USDB consent calendar. Is there any motions to remove anything from the consent calendar? So I'll need you to raise your hand, board member. I don't have that sophisticated system here with lights and everything, so get my attention if you can, or make sure that you're heard. So I'm not seeing any motion to remove anything from the consent calendar, so I'm seeking a motion to approve the general consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a so moved. Second. Not seeing any other discussion, so let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Okay, next we have information and action on this as our monthly budget report. So we invite Carl MP to help us with this portion. There's several things that we'll be doing here today. So if I forget something, Carl, will you make sure I go back to it on the actionable items?
Good afternoon. I know when you all woke up, you thought, good, we're going to talk accounting and financial statements and debits and credits. I'm sure that's not the case. I'm going to make this as painless as possible. The first agenda item is the budget status report, which comprise the year-end financial statements. And the statements are comprised of three statements. The first one is a statement of changes in net position, sometimes called the income statement. Second statement is the statement of cash flows, and the third statement is the statement of net position or the balance sheet. And on the financials, you'll see we have three columns. One is for Fund 9215, and that is the fund for all of USDB.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on.
Try it again.
Testing.
I don't want to let you do one or the other. Keep going.
How about this one? No?
No, it's not you. It's not you. It's
Okay, I'll just talk really loud. The first column is Fund 9215, which is all of USDB. The majority of all the transactions flow through this fund. The second fund is our donated funds account, Fund 9214, and the third column is just the column of total between the two funds. I'm going to simplify all this and just say, if I was in your shoes, how did the financial year that ended June 30th turn out? Well, it turned out really well. We had in excess of $4.2 million of revenues and state appropriations that exceeded our expenses. And we're going to get into how that break down that $4.2 million in just a minute as we get into the next agenda item. But on this one, I just wanted to ask if there's any questions that you may have in regards to the three financial statements.
Okay, any questions from board members? I'm not seeing any. Want to throw a compliment to Carl on this evolution. It just gets better and better as you're populating. Maybe you're just getting more comfortable, or it's looking good. Appreciate the thoroughness that you have that you're putting into your statements. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Please continue.
Okay, the next agenda item are the action items that we will need you to vote on. The first item that was in the packet are the fee increases and the proposed fee increase that we are proposing. We're proposing just modest, minimal changes in fees for what we're charging for interpreters and educators. It just reflects the cost of the increase of salary and benefits. The old fee was $45.69. We're proposing a new fee of $46.83. So you can see it's not much of a fee increase. The fee increase for the educator was $61.32, and we're looking to increase it to $62.85. Lunch tickets used to be a whopping $2. We're increasing that to $2.25. Now, all these fees, we don't have to charge the maximum amount. We can charge up to, but we can't charge in excess of these fees. The room rental on a dormitory fee was $19. We're proposing that be increased to $50. Again, we're not anticipating many people wanting to stay in the dorms, but if they do, the fee increase will be $50 a night. The room rental for a conference room here was $94. We're rounding that up to $100. The room rental for the multi-purpose or for the gym was $188, and we're proposing $200. Now, we do have one new fee that we are proposing, and that is a $500 study abroad fee. And what we found out that if the student participates and commits to $500, we find that they're not canceling at the last minute and not going on the trip after we bought the airline ticket, made the hotel rooms, and paid the travel agent fee. Now, the good news is once they pay that $500, the $500 is refunded back to them, and so they can use that for incidentals on their trip. So it's really a net zero revenue for USDB, but it works out really well for our students. So those are the proposed fees that we are anticipating and requesting to be increased. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions from board members on the fee schedule with the proposed increases. What will happen at the conclusion of any discussion that you have, then I'll be seeking a motion to approve this fee schedule. So we do have a question. Board member Hanson.
Where is it?
Is it not working?
Guess
Says
it's not
green
working.
is-
I'll just
Here,
okay,
pass
Mr.
this one. Here we go.
Is that working?
Okay.
It just picks
My
up
question
this
was just how the advisory council felt about the fees. If anybody has any comments.
This is Felipe.
Okay.
So you were talking about $500 that can be used as a deposit, and if the student decides to go ahead and cancel out on that trip for the study abroad, is it a time frame that says within the 30 days you'll get your money back, within 60 days, or is it just once you've made the deposit you've lost the money? So what is the policy behind that?
So what we do is they deposit the money, $500. If they were to back out last minute, we use some of that money to cover, usually these trips cost about $3,000. So we use the $500 to cover what we lost, some of what we lost. We haven't had that problem though, since we've had them put a deposit down. Everybody commits.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to respond to that, so thanks for looking us in. We actually don't have that information, so it would be great. We would love to chime in on it if we maybe could have that forwarded. Is that
Sure.
all right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
So I hate to give an opinion on something that I have not reviewed yet.
Board member Reeby.
So all of these fees are for students, and are there fee waivers available for every student? Because $500 is a lot of money for some students.
Yeah, so most of these fees are actually for adults. It's what we charge other school districts for interpreters or teachers. There's only really two fees for students. One is, and this is on a fee schedule that has already been approved by the legislature for years and years. It's just every year we are supposed to update it. It's $100 for a sports fee, and then the study abroad fee, we've always done the $500 deposit for that. We just have never had it on our fee schedule before, so we're not actually changing a practice. We're just complying with the law now to have it on our fee schedule.
Is there a waiver available for that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
and we have ways to have a lot of the kids earn the money too by working here for us, if and stuff like that. But in light of the new audits regarding school fees, we reviewed what we were doing, and we realized, oh, we only have one fee. It's just for sports participation. And we thought, uh-oh, there's that other thing we do. We better get that approved by the board.
Other questions from board members? Yes.
Okay, so another comment, with the fees that you just mentioned and the fee schedule, with all the increases that are going to happen, what happened when there was an increase in previous years? Was there any complaints, any issues with those?
We actually haven't had any increases in previous years. They've been just minor increases, like based on wages for how much an interpreter was and so forth. And those were recommended by the LFAs to the legislature, and we just sort of went with whatever they recommended. 2 years ago was the last time there was an increase, and it was a couple of dollars an hour for whatever professional it was. The $100 sports fee, as long as I've known, has been that for years and years and years.
Okay. One thing that'd be really handy to do to follow Robert's rules, and that if we have a question, it'd be nice to know you have a question for the State Board of Education or for the superintendent, because I wouldn't be able to answer that. So just so that we can kind of track who the question's best, or who the question's directed to. Usually a question goes to the chair, and then the chair will find someone to answer it, but we're okay. But it'd be nice for my benefit if I knew who you wanted to respond to your question.
It would also be helpful to know as you speak if you'll identify yourself, because we're recording this and then it can be on the recording who's speaking.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions regarding, yes, Vice Chair Ellis?
Okay. This is directed towards the superintendent or Michelle, if whoever needs to. So you mentioned that you looked through your school fees after the audits were produced. Did you check with all of your teachers to make sure they weren't charging fees in the classroom that were unaccounted for on that schedule?
Yes, our teachers don't charge any fees.
One request that I would have, Superintendent Coleman, is when you have your proposed fee schedule and you have this created, if there was a way to make sure there's a couple of these fees that are set by the legislature, if you could have that, I think it would be best serve my board as we're approving things and the public, that we have all of the fees and your fee schedule on one sheet. You could reference on that sheet that what's approved from the legislature, but I think it would be a lot easier for me as a board member and also for the public.
Yeah.
And that's what we have here. That's what this sheet is.
Okay, so
it's the previous fees that were already previously approved by the legislature, and any changes that were proposed.
Okay, there's the you brought up the sport one, and where am I seeing that?
No increase on the sports.
It's an activity fee. Oh, it's not on there, but there's no change suggested. in
Okay,
that.
but even if there's not a change, it would be nice to have whatever existing fees, whatever you're collecting, as far as any kind of fee, to have it on this schedule. And if it's legislative approved, that would be good to have an asterisk or something that has that reference.
Yeah, that should have been in there. I'm sorry.
So
That's one item that's
that was the only part that was confusing me, and I'm going, I wonder, okay, did I hear that correctly? But that would be nice as a request. Board Member Reeby?
I'd like for Superintendent Coleman or Michelle Tanner, So my understanding that our, the fees for the trust lands paid for the international travel, or is that the same as study abroad?
Yes.
So why are we using fees to make a deposit if that's being paid for by the trust lands? Is that included in the amount of money that's being paid for by the trust lands?
Yeah, and that's why we give their deposit back to them actually, and
Oh.
let them use that for their own spending money,
Okay.
and so they end up actually not paying anything for the trip, but the deposit holds their place, so that when we make a commitment for $3,000 for them,
We know
they're really in.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from or requests from board members? Okay, seeing none, I'm seeking a motion. Board Member Reeby.
I move to accept their fee schedule.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Board Member Gravitt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting is unanimous. Okay, Carl.
Okay, great. The next item is the $4.2 million that we referenced in the first agenda item, which was the excess revenues and appropriations over expenses. It's broken down into three categories: enrichment funds, USIMAC, and the agency or USDB money. The enrichment fund is, Board Member Reeby was just referencing, is the state land trust money, and it has a balance of $1,452,929 as of the year end. USIMAC, which is our resource center, has a balance of $85,489. And then the agency carry forward, or USDB, that we have is $2.6 million. So the three numbers of that comprise the $4.2 million. And we're going to get into the agenda items here in just a minute in terms of the spending plan for those items. USIMAC should be the next agenda item, or the next handout. And they had a balance of $85,000. They've spent that on a scanning machine that scans Braille and is a real time saver and a real resource for USIMAC. And they've the cost of that was approximately $92,000. So they've used their $85,000 that they had carried forward, and then the balance is being used out of this year's budget. The next item is the carry forward for the agency, USDB, and that had a balance of $2.6 million. Now this is a list, and it's really hard to see because the items are so small on the Excel spreadsheet. But the superintendency back in the spring and the summer has spent a lot of time in identifying what projects they wanted to fund if we did have a carry forward, which we did, $2.6 million. And so these are all valuable projects that some have been begun, some have been completed, and others still have not commenced yet. But we anticipate spending about $2.4 million of that, leaving about another $200,000 of additional projects that we could fund to utilize all this money before next fiscal year end. The third category is enrichment funds, and that'll be in the next agenda item. But that's something that we present to you on a monthly basis. We had the advisory council and also the board approve those back in the June meeting, and we'll get to that list in just a minute. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have on the carry forward and our spending plan to how to utilize that $4.2 million.
Okay, questions from board members? I didn't see Brittany. I didn't see you slip in, Brittany. How are you?
She's sneaky.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. I appreciate the detail here. I am seeking a motion to approve the fiscal year 19. Oh, Here we go, we have a question or comment. Board Member Reeve.
So I think the last time we met together, we were talking about the Springville campus, and there was some struggles. Has that been resolved, Springville?
That's great. That was going to be part of my superintendent's report, but I'd be happy to share it now because part of this money goes towards closing that gap. What we have done in conjunction with DFCM is they went out to bid now to find what they call a construction manager general contractor, CMGC. And they went through the whole process of doing that. Many different companies bid, and they hired Grimal, who is really good at doing similar projects like this that because of the market have shot up in price. And so we've gone through the last several weeks a process of value engineering for the third round and stripping out anything that's not really necessary in our building and gotten it down to a point where now DFCM is going to approach the legislature in this next session to get the remaining money that we're short. In the meantime, so we don't have to stop construction for an entire year, they're seeking permission from the state to start the groundwork in, I think maybe by the end of October, and let the groundwork happen before starting construction in March. And so it's putting us back a few months, but not an entire year. And then we're stripping out a couple of things like the landscaping and the audio-visual packages, which go at the end of a project anyway. And so that the additional money the legislature gives us this year will go towards those elements. And that way we'll have permission to start the whole rest of the building until then. And that's the latest plan anyway. But at least they're going to start the groundwork, we hope, in a couple of weeks if the director of DSCM gives them permission. And I've met with him also.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hurrying back. We're highly efficient here. Just so that you're aware, what we're talking about over here is, I believe it's in statute that we are limited on how much we can carry forward, and I think we're just making sure that we're in compliance. And on that, and then also it's really not posted on our agenda on approving. Well, it's posted that we'll be approving our carry forward, but not spend plans. But I believe it's in order that we do both today. Is that correct, Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones? And so I'll let Carl talk to the one concern that we had. Can you speak to that?
I can. Deputy Jones just pointed out that the statute restricts the carry forward to 5% of the federal and state revenues. And so that amount comes to approximately about $1.9 million. So essentially the balance of the carry forward for the agency is a little bit above that.
So barely. So Deputy Superintendent Jones, could you help us out here a little bit to speak to if we're just a little bit off on that? What are the consequences?
Scott Jones. So that's the criteria, and we've done what we needed to do for you as the board. So you've been advised on that because it's a board rule that says that, they can't have more than 5% of the carry forward of the federal and the state funds. It doesn't mean that they violated anything. They just got to make sure that that's communicated and they have a spend plan for it.
Okay. So it's been disclosed.
If I could just say one thing, because that will be part of the budget proposal coming out of the legislative session for 2020. So your carry forward, does that make sense on that too? So, as long as when you close the year out, you have to make sure that you're attesting to where you're at by the way of that rule. So you just do that.
Okay. Superintendent Coleman.
And if I could add one thing too, part of this money, although it's technically carry forward, it's earmarked.
Right.
Like there's $750,000 earmarked for the Springville project, and so that will carry through. And we don't anticipate the legislature coming in and saying you can't have that at the same time
That is correct.
giving us money to finish the project.
That's correct, and that's the details though. And so when you do have a balance over the 5%, you need to make sure that publicly by way of the rule that you addressed that and you've done so today. So that's all we're doing.
Okay, so we brought it to the public and to this board's, all the board members' attention, and it has been brought publicly. So, Board Member Reeby.
So as we're looking at this color-coded list, are all these different colors, different line items like we just discussed in state finance meetings? And can the unobligated, unrestricted funds be moved out of one category into the other category, or do we have to keep them in the same category? We just had a conversation about.
Okay. Superintendent Coleman.
That's a very good question. This color coding is just our internal to help us look at the different chunks. For example, you'll notice all of the one-time improvements we did to our Ogden campus are in orange. The Salt Lake campus here is JMS in blue, and the green is Springville, and then the purple is other miscellaneous items. So those are, it's all in one category of carry forward, but that's how we provided it up for ease of access.
So they can.
And yes, they could be moved around. Although we don't plan to do that because we're executing these now. That's a plan we came up with in the spring, really.
Okay, there's any other questions from board members? That's why we have these kind of meetings, to have this openness and clarity on the whole budgeting process and carry forward. I'm still seeking a motion on the fiscal year, or the fiscal year 19 carry forward. Board Member Reeby.
I move that we carry forward these funds.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Board Member Bolter, any further discussion? Not seeing any. Let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. I'm also seeking a motion to approve the spend plans. Oh, sorry. I thought you were just smacking his arm. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins. Looks like a karate chop.
Approve the FY 2019 carry forward spend plan.
No, we did that already. Isn't that what we just did?
No, we did the carry forward, but now we have the spend plan that we want to do separate. So we have a motion on the spend plans. Is there a second? Second. Vice Chair Ellis, any further discussion? Board Member Reeby.
So the spend plans were created by each department with the advisory council. Is that how they were created?
Superintendent Coleman.
No, the spend plan was created by the administration. With the one-time leftover money we have each year is intended by the legislature for us to take care of things like facility needs that aren't big enough to go to the FCM. And so we get feedback from each of our divisions on what types of physical facilities needs they have in those areas. And then we put all those in and prioritize them. And actually this year we were able to get everything that was recommended to us by our directors into that plan. And still have the leftover money for the spring bill that they needed. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any other discussion, we'll vote on the motion to approve the spend plans. Let's put it to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. My paper agenda doesn't match my other agenda. It's a little different.
I miss.
But barely, I think. So I'm going to stay with this one here. Okay, next is annual USDB. Is that what you have on yours? Is the annual report?
Yes.
Superintendent Coleman.
Okay, thank you. Board members and advisory council members, the next item we have is our annual report. This is required by legislation that we present it each year to the Education Interim Committee, and we always like to bring it to the State Board of Education first, since you are our governing board. And so that's what you have in front of you. It's based on, the categories of this report are based on words directly in the code that ask us what to report on. If there are things in future years that you're interested that we report on, we can insert that too. But currently there's a little task force going on to recodify the education code, and they have asked me to participate with a group of legislators and Leah Voorhees from the board office as we go through this. And one of the things I recommended was that they review the things that they request from us in our annual report, and the legislators let us know if that's really what they want to see every year or not. I have a suspicion they don't actually read this. But we are always in compliance by doing it, and so we're open to any feedback from you or from them and from our advisory council members as well. So what you have in front of you is the report that we prepared this year, and I'd be happy to just go through that with you.
It's not in board docs, so we can only see what's on the screen.
It's a hyperlink.
It's a hyperlink. Oh, hyperlink.
And there's a link to it there. But when our docs were due for board docs, we didn't quite have it finished, and so the link allowed us to make a couple of edits, and now it's available that way. So, as you can see, this report used to be over 100 pages long, and we've reduced it as much as possible for those who don't read it. So I have a little executive summary at the beginning. The code says, give us a report on the activities of the superintendent and the associate superintendents. We interpret that to mean, give us a report on the programs of the school. So we have, which we oversee. So we have a couple of links to those programs there on our website, and then directly under that we have some graphs that we thought would be maybe interesting to you and to the public. Our total students served, this is almost 4,000 students. Because our campuses have a certain number of students and our outreach services are another number, we've usually limited to that in the past, but we actually provide additional services to students that are not served by our educators. Like, for example, we have audiology and vision services and interpreting. And so we thought it's important in our annual report to really capture the entire scope of what this agency does statewide. Where underneath that, you have a couple of other graphs, like the service enrollment by location. We've got classrooms, which you can see, despite our beautiful campuses that we have, that's really a minority of where we serve students, only 15%. Outreach is 35%, and then nearly half of the children that we serve are in our parent infant program from ages 0 to 3. So that's quite an extensive program. Then we have a division of our campus-based enrollment, and we have a visual representation of the deaf students versus the blind students statewide, so you can just kind of see how the pie is divided up there. Underneath that circle with USD versus USB, we actually have the different types of services, and you can see how many are deaf and how many are blind in those with the bar graph. Do you have any questions so far? Okay.
I'm not seeing any. Oh, Board Member Reeby.
I'm very engaged in everything you do. Thank you for letting us be a part of this. So when I look at your average percentage of growth, we had a discussion about the standardized test we use statewide, and I was wondering if the students that can make the same growth, or the students that can be used in the same measures as our state students, do we have a slide that shows that? I mean, I understand that some of your students have multiple challenges with education, but some of them that do not. I was wondering how they're comparing with the state averages for our.
I will let Superintendent Tanner and Director Patton answer that for you.
All right, so on this annual report, the student outcomes that you're seeing are student outcomes from our students in campus-based programs. The students in their outreach programs will take the assessments, SAGE, whatever, at their local school district, and then their school district reports out their scores. We are a support to them, and so we provide and we tell them what supports we give, but the assessments are given by the district.
Yes, a follow-up.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
I have that effect.
With the whole pie.
Yeah, I thought I'd slip in a little bite of this dessert. I think you waited till I took my bite to ask.
And I can answer somewhat as far as the School for the Blind is, with the stage assessment and our participation in that. We have a real problem, which I know has been discussed before, with our blind students statewide taking the stage assessment. They're opting out of taking the stage assessments for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is because of just accessibility, period. You know, it's taken days last year for any of the students who did opt in to just take the math assessment. So it's not accessible to them, and then it takes a longer duration for them to finish it. So they're opting out of that. So I don't think we have good numbers on that as far as because the majority of them are opting out, which is a problem. And in our school improvement plan, we are addressing that problem in helping come up with different solutions to give assessments that will be more appropriate for them.
Another follow-up?
Yes. So I was on the RFP for the next standardized assessor American, and one of the things we talked about at length was making sure that there were plenty of accommodations for most students. The reason why I asked this is because I want to ensure that students are making comparable growth in this population as well as every other population. So I'd like to see some correlation between what you're doing and what the rest of the state's doing. My other question, and this is not linked to this one, but I was wondering what the population trend here at the School for the Deaf and Blind is. Is the population changing, or has the population stayed the same that are staying on campus, or are more people going off campus? That was kind of a general question I had. Well, that doesn't really cover this one.
I can tell you that both places are growing, both the outreach and our campus. So we ended last year, for example, our largest program here is JMS. It ended with 100 students, and we started with 120. Considering you've got 100, to grow 20 students is pretty impressive. And then our outreach students are also growing, and the numbers are growing there. And what we'll see sometimes, the students will leave the campus program, they'll do itinerant, or they'll go to a mainstream program. Sometimes that works for them, and then sometimes they return back and they go back and forth. So that will be an increase in interpreters that I would request as opposed to teachers here on campus.
And with the School for the Blind, it's very similar. I think the difference is that our programs are really focused on early childhood and early elementary education. And then we like to see them and our goal is to have them back into their least restricted environment, into the districts. And then a lot of the times, I probably shouldn't say a lot of the times, but sometimes they're coming back into the STEP programs to gain the expanded core curriculum skills that they're needing to then move further into higher education or into a career path. So that is the difference in the numbers as far as some of the School for the Deaf numbers and some of the School for the Blind numbers. I don't know if that really answers your question, but...
No, that does. My hope is that we can provide, I don't know for the rest of the people, but I would like to think that we're providing the same opportunities for our students in the School for the Deaf and the Blind, and that if they have the capacity and the opportunities, they will flourish just like the students that we have. Thanks.
Yes. You have a comment?
Yes, Representative Ruby. One of the things I wanted to also mention, the RISE assessment. We have representatives from our school that are part of discussions about accommodations within those new assessments that have been selected. And for the deaf school, we have a deaf person going in there. So,
thank you.
Any other questions, comments from board members? Do you want to continue? Or is that?
Oh, sure. So I'm not sure how much the board wants to just go through this, but Section 2 comes from a section in the code that says, let us know what activities you're doing to involve different groups. Section 3 is on student achievement, and that's really exciting because, of course, this year Utah was identified as having the top graduation rate in the country for deaf individuals. We don't have a similar metric by a third party for blind individuals I'm aware of, but it would be fascinating to see that if that ever came out as well. We actually have about 100% graduation rate here. So.
Can I just interject too, that very thing that I was talking about with the graduation rate for the School for the Blind students, the majority of them are graduating in their district programs because of that very thing that they're back into their least restricted environments with supports from USDB, being successful in graduating within their districts.
That's right. And anyway, then you can go down and see how we've divided things up. We have the School for the Deaf report first. We talk about modalities, vocabulary growth, and there's a lot of data and charts there on academic progress and assessments. It's a little tricky for us, whether it's our blind students or our deaf students, because of low-end scores, and also because every student's individual and they come in and out of our program so often. It's really hazardous to try to compare cohorts like you would in a traditional school. Cohorts just don't really mean anything, frankly. It's just individuals here. And frankly, maybe that's the way all education should be. That's a subject for another time. And then after that, we have School for the Blind information that's the same.
Okay, so we have access to this through the link, and this is an information item, doesn't require any action. Is there any questions or comments board members have regarding the annual report? Board member Reeby?
So like on page 16, this illustrates that point exactly, because the kids come in and exit that on year 2015-16 you were crushing it, and then 2017-18 it's kind of not as exciting. So that does illustrate that point really well. So how do you measure, like, what are you, I mean, like, I don't understand how we would show growth in this.
Ask Michelle how many times I've asked that question in our superintendency meetings every week.
I'm glad I'm on the same page now, because I really am excited that you guys are the largest graduating class, but I'm kind of curious what we can point to besides that and say, look what great things they're doing.
Yeah. So for every, I would say 95% of our students, even greater, are on an IEP, not on a 504. So they get plenty of assessments. We assess them every year, and we do a vocabulary assessment. It's done in the language that they use. This is at the deaf school. We also, you saw this MAP data. That is the one assessment tool that is actually being used by deaf people, so I can aggregate the data and say compared to other deaf students how they're doing, and I can aggregate the data and say how they're doing compared to the national average, which I gave you the national average. So we have individualized assessment. The MAP data, the beauty of the MAP data is that it can tell me exactly where that student is and where they were and where is the projection and where we anticipate them going. And then we can also give you a report that's for the larger context, even though we know our N numbers are very low and we have to be very cautious in how we interpret that data. But they all get individualized assessment. We do Woodcock-Johnson's, for their reading and math assessments. We use the MAP data for assessments. We do language assessments. We also do language samples. And we have specialists who do specific samples on their reading and on their American Sign Language, if that's the language they're using, or spoken English, if they're using listening and spoken language. So we have a variety of assessments, and it depends on whether a child is a spoken language user or a visual language user, which assessment language we're using to give that assessment in. But we do a lot of assessments, a lot of beyond what's required.
And Susan, do you have any input on the assessing students who are blind or visually impaired?
I just will point out that we have also used the maps for the math assessment in years past. This last year we used the Woodcock-Johnson, but against accessibility has been a really large problem. So this next year we are implementing the Galileo, which has already been purchased and is ready to roll out this fall and then next spring. Arizona State has been using that assessment with some great success, so we're very hopeful that will give us some real longitudinal data as we move forward and really give us some better numbers as far as knowing how our kids are really doing in that field. The maps nor the Woodcock-Johnson has really been extremely appropriate for blind kids where they are for other kids, School for the Deaf, so it's just kind of a trial and error, but we're really hopeful with this Galileo, with the new assessment that we're going to be implementing, that will help.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'm just asking about growth, and I know we use the term assessment a lot when we talk about growth, but I just wanted to make sure that we are monitoring the growth, and I know you are, but it's kind of hard to see in this report, so I'm just glad that you could explain it to me. I'm glad that these kids are showing, all your students are showing growth, so thank you so much for explaining that to me.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I will point to one graph that we have average months gained per month served And we measure everything against a year of growth for an average student, see how we're doing. And that's been one of our really strong points, especially in the blind school, and then with vocabulary and reading growth with the deaf students as well. So we're always looking for better ways to measure.
Okay.
Thank you. Those are great questions.
When we speak about growth, this in particular, this graph can be confusing if you don't understand it. A standard 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, you would have a flat line across the bottom of this graph. The fact that it's not just above the line, but it's significantly above the line, shows that they've made a phenomenal growth in the area of vocabulary. So that's what this graph would reflect.
Okay. Well, Superintendent, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. That this concludes your annual. Oh, I'm
so sorry.
Oh.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask a question, Chair, or not.
Feel free.
But I'll take the opportunity to see if I can.
Yes, you can.
Is it possible to have exit data on our students as far as, because I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's sensitive to measure that growth, but the growth that we're looking at is not only towards graduation, but to secondary, post-high environments as well. So I did look at that, but I'm wondering as far as graduation, post-graduation, are the students that graduate employed in that year or within 2 years? Are they in secondary, college? Are they going on to secondary post-high school environments for learning? What does that look like?
So, as you are probably keenly aware, we have that the UPIPS data that people follow up and do graduation and post-graduation. Yeah. So we have data in there as well that you can see where our graduates have been. One of the problems that we've had with that data is that they often are unable to reach, particularly my deaf students who don't answer a phone. And so the data in that is limited, and there were problems, as the board was aware last year, with some of our data in the UTREC system. And so there were some errors in our data for last year for the exit data, but we do track it, and we do follow up, and we have what data we have from that report.
Okay.
You have a follow-up?
Well, somewhat in that understanding the weaknesses and the challenges of the system that's in place statewide to track secondary or post-high school outcomes for students with disabilities. Wondering if there's an in-house way for us to look at the growth in the assessments and all the growth you've got measured on here, how it's translated into opportunities for the students once they leave this environment. Whether that be aside from the state program, if there's something more sensitive to measure that, to see that what we're doing here is having generalized effects to outcomes for students.
Excellent question. So one of the areas that we've been strongly focusing on in the deaf school, and I'll speak to the deaf school, is transition. Exactly what you're talking about, because transition is the name of the game. If you can't get them to where they're actively involved in life and society and they're happy in the world around them and they're contributing, then we have failed. And so what we've been doing, we purchased even recently, a World of Work curriculum is what it's called, and we're starting at kindergarten. We're starting at kindergarten, and we're implementing ways for them to start thinking about other jobs rather than doctor, lawyer, teacher, fireman. We are trying to explore their options because we know there's a lot more options. We've also been working hard on trying to get a transition specialist in place, and as you would all would be aware of, that has been a exercise in frustration because we are having such a hard time filling these positions. But the idea is that the transition specialist also helps beyond just college and career, but actually doing some internships and taking a real interest in the one, in the starfish on the beach, and making sure that child is successful. So that's where our emphasis has been, because you're exactly right. If we get them through, if we just send them out the gate and they're not successful, we've failed. And so I appreciate that you're bringing that up.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. These have all been,
Sorry.
yeah, okay. Is it Board Member Hanson? Okay.
This is for the, whoops, is it working? There we go. The superintendent, or maybe Michelle will need to answer it, or another staff member. In relationship to that question, the board passed the alternate diploma for kids with special needs and the career development credential last year. And so I'm wondering if you guys are using that, or if you know how many of your students are using that, because I know some of them are out, and because we'd like to know if that was helpful.
Okay, Michelle.
We are so grateful that you passed that. One of the things we just recently discovered, we've been giving our students certificate of completions, and what we discovered is that can count as a dropout. And so we were really disturbed when we looked at that. We're like, oh no, it's an alternative diploma. So we are absolutely grateful that you have given us another option for our students, because our students are alternate. We have several students that are alternate route, not all of them, but we have several students that benefits for. So we're really grateful, and we are taking advantage of that. I'm extremely grateful that you've done that.
Follow up?
So Michelle, are you using the career development credential with any of them?
We haven't had any that's taken advantage of that yet, but we will be looking at it this year. We have some students that are going along that route.
Okay, before we move to the next agenda item, which is the strategic plan for the deaf, is there any other questions or comments on the annual report? I'm not seeing. Thank you, Superintendent. Do you want to lead in, Superintendent, on your next strategic plan?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is just give about 15 minutes or so to Superintendent Tanner to discuss the strategic plan for the School for the Deaf, and we'll give about the same amount of time to Director Patton. That sounds so official. To Susan.
No one calls me anything like that, so yeah.
So Michelle first, then Susan will talk about the strategic plan for the School for the Blind, and then we will just entertain questions, have conversation, or you may interrupt as well, and it should be interactive. And afterwards, we have a little bit of time for the advisory council and board members to interact, discuss things, ask questions. And that's really all we have.
And maybe with the interest of time, as you're presenting your strategic plan, if you can write your questions down that you may have, then we can get to the end of the plan and then ask. I'm equal sides, making sure I'm not missing somebody here. I'm not picking on you, Board Member Reeby.
All right, thank you. Well, I want to start at the very beginning, at the top, and this, you have access to this. These are links that should link you to the bottom, or if you'd like to drill down on the specific goal. So these are the goals that we've been working on, and we've also added some. So some are on more maintenance mode, and some are actively, they're constant, ongoing. I should also iterate that this is a living, breathing document. So it alters and changes. So if you come back into this in a couple months, you should see changes. So we use this as a guidepost, but we also talk about where we have been and where we are going. So I will go through these quickly. Closing the division between the two approaches in deaf education. Several years ago, in thinking about the holy war that exists in deaf education, I thought to myself, this has been going on for hundreds of years. There's no way that it can be overcome. And then my epiphany was, well, do what we can, right? So we're trying our very best. We are having some successes and we are having some struggles. But the point is, we're still focusing on closing the gap between these two approaches. So the action steps are listed above. Those that are lined out are the ones that we have accomplished, or things that we have done. And then I've identified in each area what we've done in 2016-17, this goal, and what we've done in 2017-18. And so we have the progress, but I'm going to focus on my next steps. So we would like the preschool classrooms to collaborate better in the same building. So what I was hoping this year was that by being next door to the other teacher who shares a different philosophy, that they would be able to build more respect and camaraderie, and that they would be, by being close to someone and associated with them, you can't hate them. You can't dislike them. And so the idea is that they're together, they're working together, they're collaborating together. Makes it easier for the students, if they want to go back and forth, to have them right down the hallway. We've asked the educators in our preschool programs to meet daily to coordinate their schedules and lesson planning. It's an idea of working together. And then they meet on a weekly basis to look at the data and see how students are doing, how they're progressing. And where they're doing field trips together. The other thing that we are going to continue to do is working on the Lead K committee. You remember that, the Lead K initiative several years ago. We've been ongoing with that. We have reached the point where we've selected the assessments we would like to use, and we've also talked about the milestones. So now the next piece of that is to develop a brochure for distribution. So we are actually taking all the information from the Lead K committee. We've submitted it to a vendor to create the documents, and we're going to take it back to the Lead K committee and have them look at it and see what they want to do to change the brochure, those kind of things. And then we're also taking that data where we have what's called VTOTS. What that is the student information system that they use for birth to 3. And we are trying to get those assessments put into that data so that our parent advisors are using it and using the data to make sound decisions. And so that's where that one is. And then the other thing that we've talked about, and this you'll see throughout several of the goals, is an anti-bias training. So that means I've been looking for years to see if there's any anti-bias training in deaf education. And I even had somebody as soon as last tell me we must maintain the biases. And I'm like, what? What? Oh, I just want them to look at children and see the children and see what the needs of the child are. The reason that there are children that are successful with a spoken language program and that's successful in an ASL language program is they're both needed. And so you have to meet the needs of the child whichever way you can, whatever they can. So we're trying to teach the teachers to not be so biased towards the others. And so we're going to have to develop this one on our own because it's not out there. Next priority area was maintaining the capacity and access to quality educational interpreters. Several years ago, you recall, we increased the pay of interpreters, and we've also asked for more interpreters. That has been an amazing thing. I think even when Scott was with us, Deputy Jones was with us, we were working our best. Now we were swapping out interpreters all left and right because we couldn't maintain them, and we are not having that problem anymore. That problem has stopped. We did ask we just increased one staff interpreter that keeps someone on staff because we have more deaf administration and deaf people working with us. And so we need more solid interpreters here on staff. And then we're just going to maintain those goals. We talked last year, and this is an ongoing goal, about reaching deaf and hard of hearing children and students sooner. So you'll recall that we passed some legislation that asks that medical providers refer their students to us so that we get to know about them. As we work through what we're doing with Lead K, that will impact this one, which is creating the informational flyer and or brochure that we will share with medical providers across the state and give it to parents. And then we're also going to put that on our website. So those are the goals for that one. Since we passed the legislation, that one is our next step. Strengthening the early intervention program. So you'll see all of these are ongoing under this one. But we're going to we have a quality assurance plan. We recently went through an audit from the Department of Health to see how we're doing with our early intervention services for deaf and blind students. And from that, we generate a quality assurance plan of things that were our strengths, but we also talk about how we can improve and make ourselves better. So we're working on that and creating that and implementing the quality assurance plan. We're training our staff. We're providing training to develop their expertise, but also some of the things that were included in the quality assurance plan. And again, the anti-bias training. And we're offering some early, it's called tele-intervention, where you can meet with the parents and their families in an online format. We find in the deaf school that is something that's very beneficial for the parents. Some parents like it because, really don't want anybody seeing their house. They can keep it in one spot. We also find that the children are more natural because the provider's not actually in the room, they don't realize the provider's helping. And the most important thing though, is by doing that, it forces the parent to be the one doing the activity. So when our providers are there, sometimes they'll jump in and help and show the parent, they'll do more demonstration, and it's nice to tell the parent, and then the parent has to do it, and the parent actually learns to do the activity. So we're doing that as well. We're trying to reach more students across the state using technology. You can see the progress we've made. We have implemented Canvas, and we're encouraging our teachers to use more of that tool to access students, not just here, but out across the state. For example, one of the things we've been working with the board staff in creating a financial literacy class. So we know that every deaf child across the state needs a financial literacy class. So we sent 2 of our teachers out to NTIB so that the students who take the course from us can also get credit through NTIB. But then also we're able to provide a class. Let's say they're in a class in GUAB, and maybe the child is finding that it's hard to access the curriculum or access the class. They could take this online with us, and then we could submit that to their school for credit. And they could have it. And when we develop this course, we're developing it in American Sign Language and in spoken language, so that whichever the child gravitates to or makes them feel more comfortable, they can select whichever one works for them, so it's accessible to all the students. We also purchased Chromebooks for the secondary students, that's middle school and high school. So all the students we went through a 101 initiative where we got everybody technology, and we just thought it'd be better for our high school students since they're writing papers, doing more sophisticated things for their classes. So we got them Chromebooks. Another one, improve flexibility in learning environments to increase personalized learning. That is an ongoing goal that we have here at USDB to more personalize the learning of our students. We are hosting the League of Innovative Schools. I'm sure Superintendent Coleman will talk about that. We're hosting that so we can encourage and build on that momentum. And we're trying to work towards getting more flexible scheduling for our students. So traditionally, school starts at 7 in the morning or whatever, and it's done by 2:10 for the high school students. Well, what if they wanted to take a SLIC class, and that doesn't align with whatever school we're using with? How do we get them to be flexible so they can take the class at SLIC, they could take a class with us, and then also work with some of the courses they want to up at the mainstream school. So we're working to be very flexible with their scheduling, and that can be a challenge sometimes with transportation. So that's what we're working on. We're doing more project-based learning, and we're providing training for our teachers so they know how to do more personalized learning. The next goal is increasing collaboration with our stakeholders across a variety of disciplines. One of the things I mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, we're working with the committees that are developing the RISE and ASPIRE assessments to make sure those assessments are accommodating to our students. We're visiting the special education directors personally, trying to set a goal for that this year, to spend more time with them and get to know them better. And then we need to educate them about the changes that occurred in the technical assistance manual so that the districts are all aware of what we do and how they interact with us. And this is addressing Advisory Chair Harrop's concern, strengthening the transitional program from a school age to adult to create a qualified workforce. So this is an additional goal that we added just this year. Because that is certainly a critical need. And so we're trying to fill that role of transition specialist. We're training our teachers, whether you've got a junior achievement curriculum, we're implementing that. We're preparing for a huge event that's going to be offered for other schools for the deaf to participate in. It's called BizTown. It's only been done once. It's done by Washington State. And they create 2 days in which we have here, I don't know if you've heard of it, we have a Junior Achievement City. It's a mini city. It really looks like a mini city.
It's super cool.
It's super cool, and there's very few places that have it. Washington has one, we have one. So when other states have heard that we were interested in doing this, I've been contacted by other schools for the deaf saying, please, can we join? And so we're trying to coordinate that in June so that we can come over to the deaf students, take over the city, run the city, be mayors, things like that. And they do a lot of fun things, and we gear up and train for that the whole year long. And then we do this event in June. And then the other thing too is we want to create more internship opportunities, which again reflects back on the flexible scheduling, so that students have the opportunity to have that on their career diploma if that's what they choose to do. They have that stance. So we're trying to provide more options and to have them be more successful out there. So that is my report.
I know we have at least one question. We have more than one, and Board Member Hanson's been really busy writing over there. So I thought you'd have a follow-up or something, but like a full page. So Board Member Hanson.
A couple of things. First, I would love it if you would add trying to have students access the career development credential to that, because that's why we made it. So, and it's a great opportunity for students. So that would be fantastic. The other thing is, do you have LDL and ASL parents on the advisory council? Are there some of each?
We don't have a parent representative for any of the deaf students right now. We have Jared Alabest. He represents the oral deaf community. He grew up oral, and he signs. And then we also have Philippe, who represents the ASL English or the deaf. He represents the deaf community. So I should probably step right into that. So deaf people don't divide themselves out when they get to be as adults, and I'll let them speak to it, as I'm only an oral deaf adult or I'm only a signing deaf adult. And so in children, and I know a lot of parents talk about that, only do one or the other. In my experience, and I'll let them speak to it, I see the deaf community more broad, and they're accepting of however other people present themselves, whether they present themselves as someone who chooses to speak, and then sometimes they sign, and sometimes people use writing, and sometimes they sign. And so what I'd like to do is get that down to the parents, or when they're working with their babies, to understand it's not an either or, it's an and they can do whatever works, and some of them are going to use more of one and some of the other, and they will be accepted either way because everyone's an individual. And that's so I should probably not speak on their behalf, but
if I could follow up just a little bit so you guys have an idea of what I'm referring to. I'm hearing from LDL parents about, and they're concerned, and if there's data to back up the fact that if they learn from ASL and LDL together, it's better for the kids, I think that would be great. But their concern is that if they've got a toddler and they're learning, if someone's doing ASL with them, they want their toddler to learn oral, so they want someone speaking to them by voice, orally, and not so much the sign. And they don't think it benefits them to have the sign. And so if there's data out there that you can show me, because I think that's what the superintendent said, that there's data that shows when they learn to both, it's better for them. That would be helpful to me as I talk to these parents.
I would be delighted to share that with you.
I'd like to ask Jared to respond to it. Looks like he was ready to participate in this.
I understand the concern that parents want to either have a child who is deaf or hard of hearing, and they want to be able to speak with the child, and there's some concern about using ASL and whether or not ASL will hinder their ability to communicate with their parents. The fact is that ASL would not hinder a child's ability to communicate with their parent. If the child wants to speak, he will. If the child wants to use ASL, he will. But there has to be some recognition by the parent that the child has an innate sense of where he wants to communicate. For example, when I was a kid, I learned ASL of decoding my mother. I learned ASL, but at some point I made the switch to speaking, and she never tried to push me one way or the other. And so it's kind of important for children to build their own sense of identity, to let them choose their own communication preference, rather than trying to impose that on them. Because children who, there's a lot of obstacles growing up with the hearing loss, and I think it's important for children to be empowered and have the strength to decide how they want to communicate with the world. And so parents shouldn't be concerned if their child's learning ASL. There are a lot of successful people who go on to have successful jobs. So, for example, I'm an attorney. I'm deaf. There are about 400 deaf attorneys in the United States. Some of them are old, some of them are deaf, but all of them are successful. And that's true across any profession that you'll find. There are some doctors who know ASL. There are some doctors who have a hearing loss, but don't know ASL, but they're oral. The battle over communication is not really the issue. The issue is empowering the person to be able to be successful and letting the kid choose that. Because children have an innate sense of what they want. And I think our goal as a school and as a community and society is to allow freedom of choice. Freedom of choice allows people to grow and thrive. Once you restrict that, it's kind of hard. So that's how I feel about that.
Thank you, Jared. You have a follow-up before?
Jared, thank you for that. I would agree that if you teach people to self-advocate, that is the best thing to do as a parent of boys with disabilities. I agree with you wholeheartedly there.
Okay, Board Member Reevy? I'm trying to see. Okay. Please.
Philippe here.
Felipe.
There are just so many different views and perspectives on how to raise deaf children based on my personal experience and my experience with my son, who is also deaf, and given that his children are hard of hearing and deaf, and their parents have decided to do both education methods of sign language and spoken language with my grandkids. So they have decided to go both routes. The realistic outcome is that the second grandson will not be able to speak, right? So they're teaching him sign language first, and as he grows, he'll be able to articulate vocally more. And so kind of back to what Jared's point is, I grew up, my parents mandated that I learn how to talk and read speech based on the thinking at the time that I grew up. They believed that that was the most appropriate method. But research has proven through Gallaudet University that the opposite is true. Teaching sign language first is more successful. So just like in bilingual children who grow up in Hispanic homes, we don't tell them to speak English at home, right? So I think I agree with Jared's comments on allowing children to decide their preference.
Thank you. Sterling.
I would just echo that. I'm not hard of hearing, but my daughter is both deaf and blind, and until she got a cochlear implant at the age of 5, we learned as much sign as we could because that was a mechanism. We kept talking to her, knowing that she couldn't hear anything, but we still used sign to the extent that we could, hoping that she might be able to speak when she got the cochlear implant, but then her condition with the cerebral palsy didn't allow her to vocalize. So we still use sign for certain things because that's more familiar to her. She's more comfortable with that in certain areas, but she's also able to hear and then process speech as well. So I just echo both of those comments that it's not one or the other, it's both, as much as you can to give them avenues of communication, because we really don't know what they're going to choose or what they're going to be able to do.
Okay. Jared?
Just a quick addition. It's not really the modality of the language that establishes success. I find that what establishes success for a child who's deaf, whether he's oral or not, is parent participation. My mother and my father, both my parents were really involved in my language development. And I find that in my experience, both personally and professionally, that the parents who are extremely involved in their children's life and help with language development, whether that be ASL or oral, tend to have more successful children. So the parent who dives in and says, you know what, I'm going to learn ASL, it's not my thing, but for my child I'll do it, they typically will tend to have successful children. So the modality of the language is irrelevant. What's important is that the parent and the community at large rally around the child based on his language preference. And once they do that, the child is successful. But not that that's just been my observation, it's not really the language is that issue, it's just supporting the child in his language profession and preference and running with that and having the community be involved. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all so much for your comments. That's very helpful.
Okay. Board Member Reeby.
Thank you for asking.
So first we were saying we love your document, that it's ongoing and it shows you where you've been, where you're going, what your steps are to get there. For early intervention, your PIP program is phenomenal, and I told you I think it's awesome. When kids are they tested are kids tested when they're born? And if they are, and there's been an established need, what kind of follow-up goes into that? And then what interventions do we take if there is a resistance from parents? Because some of the kids that we work with in the school that I work in, when there's a handicap, they have a tendency not to send their kids or a challenge physically. So how are you mitigating all those things to make sure that your interventions are as robust as they possibly can, success is at its highest rate?
Okay, Michelle.
Thank you for the question. So intervention, we work with the Department of Health. So the Department of Health, many years ago, there was passed an early newborn hearing screening. So the minute they're born, not the minute, but before they leave the hospital, they do an evaluation to see if there's any hearing loss. So we get those reports. We are the people that go out. One of the things that we did, and when we passed that legislation, if you recall, was we wanted to get out to those kids, because sometimes because they're babies, sometimes there's questionable results. We're not really sure if they're deaf or they're not. So we asked for the language to be more flexible so we can go out before it's positive, where we know for sure it is or isn't, because that can take a year sometimes. And we just don't have the luxury of time. So our service providers go out as soon as they find out that there's even a question, and we go out and provide interventions. You were talking about what interventions, and we've captured your second question.
So if there's some resistance from the parents, how can you break down those barriers?
So ultimately, the parents have the rights and the authority to make the best decisions for the children. We like to educate, inform. One of the things in addressing to Representative Hansen's question is, Board Member Hansen's question is that we want to put everything out there. We shouldn't keep one tool behind our back. We put every tool out there. We educate the parents on the value of that tool, why that's important, how that can make a difference for their child. And we encourage and model, and we give a lot of intervention. If ultimately there are parents who make decisions that we don't necessarily agree with, but we're still trying to encourage, and we just support the parent in what they're doing, because it is their child.
And I just might want to, if I could, add to it, just from experience from parents talking to me, is they put the information out there, but the biggest part of it, and you didn't bring it up, and I'm not sure if it's in the strategic plan or not, is the invitation. There's an invite. There's not a bunch of pressure. It's here's the information, and here's an invitation, which is very well received and very well done from comments that I've received. So thank you for that invitation piece,
yes,
because it's done very professionally, especially when it's kind of hard on parents as they're dealing with the shock and awe of something different's going to be in our life and that. But so thank you for that work, Superintendent.
I'd like to maybe just candidly add one thing for the board and the advisory council. Occasionally we do have reports from parents. For example, this summer during one of our conferences, we had a parent come up and they tell us that we still have a few educators who are trying to impose their philosophy on parents. And it was very frustrating. The one parent that came and talked to me was actually in tears because she didn't think that was right, and we're very sensitive to that. It's a challenge we have with a few of our deaf educators still. And most of the time that is that they are trying to warn parents not to use sign language, which is a very outdated idea because they're afraid it will prevent them from learning their speech and so forth. So just in complete disclosure to the board and the advisory council, there is still a little bit of that left, and we're trying to work with those professionals to help them improve that. We don't see the other way. We don't see teachers at sign that ever tell parents not to use cochlear implants or hearing aids or speech or audio verbal therapy. it seemed to go the one way. So we're working on it.
Did you have a follow-up, Board Member Reedy?
Yeah, I was going to share my experience with BizTown. We were in Florida, and we were flying home the next day, and my son was the CEO, and we had $2,000 worth of vouchers promised to us if we took the next flight. And my son says, "Mom, you can't. I'm the mayor of BizTown." I'm like, what? Everybody get on the plane, but it was kind of funny that it actually came down to how much money do you want to miss school for?
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Thank you for that. Do you want to introduce the
Yes. So
Oh, you already did. Okay, you're up.
go ahead, Susan.
Well, I changed positions so I could see what Michelle was putting up, so I could follow along the same thing that you were following on, because I have it on my computer, which is the same thing. So in the interest of time, I want to talk about just the initiatives that we have, and then our status of what we're doing and where we're going with it. So I won't concentrate completely on the action steps because that might take up too much time, but please feel free to ask any questions. And if I am able to do that, I would love to answer them. Our initiatives improve literacy and numeracy, implement competency-based and personalized learning, implement technology innovation, increase diversity, diversify expanded core curriculum and program services, and enhance social media networking. These are continued initiatives from last year, but we've enhanced them and are growing them. So we felt like as a Lang admin team that these were still very pertinent and very applicable for our next year go around for our strategic plan. The first one, improve literacy and numeracy. As we talked earlier, the problems, or some of the, I don't know if problems are the words, but just challenges that we experience with assessments. Again, the big thing there is that we're excited to be using the Galileo that again has been purchased and is ready to go this fall, and then again in the spring. So hopefully we'll get some great longitudinal data when it comes to the Galileo. We are utilizing Jerry John's reading inventory and the communication matrix, the Oregon, the Insight, and the early literacy assessment for toddler and preschool students. We are going to continue, so down on the status, yep, there you go. Continue to administer, monitor, and analyze these assessments. The first session has begun with our reading clinic with 14 USB's teachers at the reading clinic at the University of Utah. This has been very successful for us. We've actually had our students improve an average of 1.2 grade levels, with some of them improving at 2 grade levels with their reading. So we're very, very excited about that. So we'll continue on with that strategy. And then also our instructional coach working. We have an instructional coach working one-on-one with our classroom teachers with our special emphasis on level 1 teachers. We've really found that one-on-one support with our instructional coach and teachers versus one instructional coach with several teachers has been very effective for our faculty. Our student achievement scores indicate an increase in Braille fluencies, and again, I talked about that 1.2 grade level increase. And then our numeracy outcomes continue to increase. I will say that we had an opportunity, and when I say we, I mean Karen Borg, and Karen Borg have had opportunities to present on literacy strategies nationally, and so we're very proud of that. And so Utah is being looked at as far as what's happening with our literacy and numeracy. The second initiative, implement personalized competency and project-based learning. This is something that we are talking about in every faculty meeting, in every division, as far as making sure that we're using competency-based approaches. We want to make sure that we're thinking outside the box and that we're growing our mindset with our book, using the growth mindset, so that we're not limiting our students to one way of thinking. We have implemented a business certification course for our STEP program students. And it's a basic one-on-one business course that's including the development of business models. And I'll talk about that down on the status part too. So down to the status, I'm sorry I'm jumping around because I know there's not a lot of time, but I want to make sure that I'm hitting on the most important things. We continue to have our PLCs with our faculty, and we're personalizing our learning spaces development, including Ogden tinkering and sensory stations operating in the blind community room. our vocational makerspace to implement student-directed project space business models for real-life learning, and screen printing business in operation to students engaged in individualized entrepreneurship. So this next bullet is a really important aspect of what we're going to be doing, or what we're doing now. We have a business certification course for our STEP program for our kids who are our post-high kids. This is so exciting because it's a year-long course. The first semester is in learning foundations for businesses, and then the second semester is implementing and applying those business strategies. They're able to gain experience in entrepreneurship, in accounting, in customer service, and then applying those in the community and having community partnerships coming in to help our kids with vision impairments learn how to function in the real world. And that kind of goes with what I think, Karen, you asked as far as the post-high experiences and how are we bridging that gap, and that's one of the ways we're really focusing on that. And then our competency-based report card is developed, posted within PowerSchool and ready for use here. The next one, implement technology innovations. This is huge for us. I keep thinking I'm always saying this is big, but the fact is they're all really big. So, but our technology innovations are really crucial for our blind and visually impaired and deafblind students. We are utilizing our innovative assistive technologies to impact and improve our student outcomes, mainly through accessible applications and apps specifically for Braille that are designed for Braille. And also, we are increasing collaboration with related service and the UAC providers to personalize student and learning technologies. We are always looking for innovative use of Canvas learning management systems. Really, what we're wanting to do with our Canvas system is to expand our learning capacity to our parents, families, and other educators throughout the state. Down here, closer, I think it's in the expanded core. One of the things we're doing with that is it's great to have our kids come to our short-term programs and learn the expanded core through our short-term programs face-to-face with our once-a-month overnight experiences. However, the kids in the rural districts have a hard time, or in the rural areas of Utah have a hard time getting there. So we're using technology to reach those kids who are then involved in community activities with a TBI or with a vision professional in their own community. So it's been a great avenue for us there. Okay, let's see. Again, it says talking about utilizing our Canvas platform. The next one, to increase and diversify our expanded core curriculum. This is just what I was talking about. We're diversifying our expanded core curriculum and short-term programs to meet those needs. One of the things that we have done this year that I was actually able to visit and spend quite a bit of time this last week was our expanded core curriculum learning lab. It is amazing, and our students in our STEP program are really learning some great expanded core curriculum skills and learning how to be independent, and it's really truly like a college dorm with a class on the side of it, so there's the college class atmosphere and then the expanded core curriculum lab, and it's really been great. And if you ever want to visit it, seriously, you'll want to move in because it's pretty amazing and awesome. We have executed new Canvas-based academics for intensive short-term programs with our technology for junior high students, and then our Nemeth and USDB math concepts with our elementary students. The other thing that we have implemented this year is a PTA for our parents and students. It's interesting because you think PTA, at least I do with my own children, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I have to be involved in one more fundraiser, I'm going to scream. Not so with this group, and it has been so successful. We've only had one meeting, but it was a great success. We had a lot of interest from our parents because they're wanting to learn about expanded core and how they can then teach those expanded core curriculum skills in their home. And so it's kind of like a brainstorming group, but we called it the PTA, and it's taking off, and we're very, very, very excited. So if you ever want to come and see that, it's pretty exciting. I kind of want to join there too. I don't want to be a part of my PTA. Just kidding. Okay, and then our blind residential program. Here we have identified the need for for a female blind mentor. We've had a male blind mentor last year, and we felt the need for a female blind mentor in our dorms. So we have a residential dorm for our male occupants and male students, and then our female. And so now this year we've implemented and hired one. We'll provide a stipend for a female blind mentor. And then our other one is our USB athletic program, which is extremely excited. We're going to be initiating line soccer, goal ball, track and field, and additional sports program as we advance the program. We have actually hired a USB athletic program coordinator, and they are hired with a stipend. So we're excited about that. We have some really excited students. Those won't only be students who are campus or who are housed at USDB, that is their school, but they're statewide. So we're finding ways to be able to incorporate all of the students statewide with vision impairments. Okay, and then the last one, enhancing our social media network. This is a big push for us because, number one, we want everyone, consumers, parents, students, school personnel in the state of Utah to know what's happening at the School for the Blind and the great programs that are going on, and really the success of our students. Our students are the heart, which we all know that. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say that, but a lot of times our consumers, our state constituents do not know, they don't see what's happening at the School for the Blind. And a lot of times it's just education through social media. So we've been working with our communications director, right here, who has been phenomenal on getting the word out and making sure that we have some media coverage on very important events so that the public is aware of what's happening at USB and USDB, I will say, as a whole. The other thing is that we feel like it's important for our parents to have support through social media, and it's been a very good avenue to meet the needs of parents, not only for content and education, but also for networking with one another and to meet other parents maybe having some of the same issues. One might live in Kanab, and the other one might be a student at USDB, but they have similar issues as far as vision loss is concerned. Some of the status, we have a USB Facebook page, Instagram account. We have a 9 More Than Core, which is an expanded core curriculum site or account on Instagram, and Robin Clark is excellent. She, I think, has daily posts actually that are very phenomenal and very fun. We will continue that and grow. I think that we all know that social media is an evolutionary process that we have to keep up with and keep being educated. So, but that is a big push for us because again, we want feedback. We want people to know what's happening at the School for the Blind, but also want their feedback, and social media is a great avenue for that. That is a very, very, very brief description. I talked with Carolyn this morning, and she wanted me to make sure that I told you that how grateful she was and how grateful we are as a school, at the School for the Blind, for your continued support of our students. We have this year and in the few years past, we've got some great support in our programs and wanting to know about our programs, and not even just approving them, just to approve them, but actually wanting to know what they are and how our kids are doing, and we really appreciate it. We really appreciate the questions. Sometimes those questions are difficult, but that makes us be better professionals and better educators too. So any questions on that? Maybe a little bit of a hot mess that I just talked about.
Any questions for Susan? Board Member Hanson? Oh, sorry. I can't. Well, hang on one second.
That one first?
We'll go here.
Okay.
Good. Go ahead.
Sorry, I should probably sit up a little bit more. I'm interested to hear how many students we have that are deaf and blind at your campus at the blind school. How are we teaching those blind or visually impaired students versus the others?
So are you talking about the combination loss of deaf and blind, or just blind and just deaf students?
No, the combination, yeah, deaf, blind students.
Okay. The combination of our students with deaf blindness is about 18 on campus. We have, as of, I want to say, I'm trying to think of our September 15th student count. I think we had 148 students statewide, and that would be children birth through 3 and then also 3 through age 22. So we have a very small amount of our student population, deaf blind student population, who are actually housed in USDB campus programs, and most of them are outreach.
And then a follow-up on that. I hear you say small, but to me, 18 is tremendous. I think that's 2 or 3 times more than I've heard. So I know that you have a lot of things going on there, so that's great to hear.
Well, thank you. We do have a lot of things going on with our deafblind population, and those students who are here at campus have very unique needs. All deafblind students always have very unique needs. But we also want to make sure that they are in their least restrictive environment in their districts, if we can provide the education that they need and support in their districts before coming to USDB. But I will say USDB provides a lot of support for those deafblind students in the districts. A lot of support.
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Hanson?
I'll try to make this my last comment. I haven't been as prolific quite as Kathleen has been, but
We're only 12 minutes behind.
I just wanted to thank the staff here. I think you're doing a fabulous job. I wanted you to know that. And then I wanted to ask you the same question I asked Michelle, is if it would be possible to add the career development credential access to your students.
And I actually wrote that down when you asked Michelle, so I made a note of that. So absolutely, I thought that was a great suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Reavy.
So, do you have a question? Oh, okay. I wanted to celebrate the 1.2 average increase. I mean, that is amazing. That is such a celebration. I love hearing project-based learning. We have learned in all education settings that is some of the most effective learning. So thank you for highlighting that. The Oricom glasses, am I saying that right? That is really cool. I just find that amazing that is an opportunity that kids get to have that, or students, and then competency-based learning. So as an educator, to hear that you are right on line with everything and then having this tremendous success of 1.2 grade growth is phenomenal. So I think you guys should celebrate that, because that's really an amazing goal and an amazing accomplishment. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I think that we have to always give our educators, first of all, number one, our students for their hard work, but then our educators. We have educators at School for the Blind and School for the Deaf that are so very into innovation and also wanting to use the latest technology that's available and hungry for it. They're hungry. They're wanting to increase the quality of life of all of our students, and honestly, can we have more? We've heard about this thing. What is it? How can we get it? Is it appropriate? I mean, they're really hungry for it, so thank you for that.
Any other questions regarding the strategic plan? Not seeing any. Superintendent Coleman, I guess we're to your superintendent's report.
Okay, great. Before I start into my little list, I just have to say how enjoyable it is for me to also listen to the great things that are going on. I know that sometimes I don't get a chance very often to hear about what's going on down in the trenches. And when I first came here, it was there was a lot of good stuff going on to work with. But when I received feedback from people who had been working here on what they thought could improve, I was a little intimidated. And being able to see how the staff has used their talents to work together and make this institution into such a tremendous force for good is pretty awesome. And so I'm very grateful for the great people that work with us here. I thought I'd say that as a precursor to everything else. And by the way, I'm gonna now that Susan has done a great job on the report, I should mention to you our deaf-blind program, no exaggeration, is the best in the country. There's nothing even close to it, and it's a model for others. And they just, anytime we go to a conference or anything, they go, I wish we could have something like that for our students who are deaf-blind. And Susan's doing a tremendous job leading that effort. In fact, we just received the grant to sustain that program from the federal government for another 5 years. And how much is that total grant? $5 million?
It is 110 a year for the next 5 years. Okay. So it is
550.
Yes, and it substantiates a lot of our parent activities and training and technical assistance statewide for a lot of educators, not just education in deaf, blind, but education for teachers and providers and parents all over the state. So we're very grateful and excited that we have it. And I will say a lot bit relieved.
Yes, and mostly you're just glad the application process is
I'm
over.
tired. Yes.
Okay. One thing I thought I'd mention, starting in my comments, are that you've noticed some emphasis today on media and communications, and I want you to know we don't do that because we crave attention. And there's different reasons people like to use media, but I thought you should know that the main reason behind that is because every time we find a parent who comes in and says, I had no idea I had these kind of resources and these kind of professionals, my child could have been benefiting from that for years, it makes me kind of cringe, and I just think, okay, at the risk of looking like we're a little bit full of ourselves, we want to put the word out there through as many media channels and as much social media as we can. We've asked our own employees to please feel very comfortable pushing out their story. Even Susan, our communications director, she has a child who's now graduated who only had one ear. She said, I never knew there was anything for someone with unilateral hearing loss, and he could have benefited. And just describing that, she said, why don't we know about this out there in the public? So anyway, thought I'd just clarify that as a thought that came to me, and we have a super great team to help us do that. Okay, Springville I reported on as an answer to Kathleen's earlier question. The deaf-blind grant, just talked about that. Building renovations. As part of our list of items that were part of our carry forward, we have been doing significant updates to our existing buildings, the other one here on campus, and also our Ogden campus. And if you have time, you're welcome to walk through either today or another time. The colors generally match this. Carpets and other items you'll notice, and it has really raised the level of that building as well. We tried to get as much done as we could before our big event next week, and that's very exciting. So I just wanted to let you know that you can actually visually see or touch the things that have been improved in that building as well. And then on our Ogden campus, if you ever get up there, it's a little different color scheme, but similar, updated, bright, great colors, and it's made a big difference in those older buildings. The event this next week is the visit from the League of Innovative Schools. And of course, we are one of 3 co-hosts. I sent an email out to all of you earlier inviting you to participate. If you're interested, just let us know, and we will make sure to acknowledge you and take care of you. The actual meetings take place in Park City, but one of the highlight of any of these league meetings in the spring or the fall is that we as superintendents get to go visit our colleagues across the country and see what they're doing. And so we will have 2 buses full of superintendents that come here at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 11th, Thursday morning, the 11th, and we have about 2.5 hours of activities for them here. They're going to walk into our classrooms. We have a little corps of 10 little ambassadors that are our deaf students who will each have an interpreter with them. They have a little shirt that they'll be wearing identifying them, and they will take a little group of 6 or 7 superintendents around to about 10 or 11 different stations throughout that building and this building and explain everything. How we teach, how we learn, our innovations, and here in the building, 2 of the stations will actually be kind of like a big old science fair, a learning fair really. And we'll have it'll be very heavy emphasis on the blind school and the technology that you just mentioned that they use, and fascinating things, the expanded core curriculum and so forth. And then we'll have a big dinner. We're going to have a performance on the stage from our Shakespeare troupe. That's the deaf students. If you've never seen that, it is fantastic. They always place in the top 3. They were showcased this year at the Shakespeare Festival in Cedar City. And they have their hearing friends in the audience voicing, so you still hear the Shakespeare dialogue, but the kids are on stage. And we will also have our blind students performing a stomp dance. What's it called? Is that what it is? It's pretty cool.
That's right.
It's kind of like a mosh pit.
Yeah, it's very fun.
So it should be really fun.
Yeah, and then we'll have a big lunch, and they'll get on the buses and head back up to Park City. So if any of you are available between 9 and 1 o'clock for any or part of all of that on Thursday, you're more than welcome to be here. Let us know so we can count on you and feed you and and honor you as being here.
Okay.
Oh, there was one more item.
Okay.
Just kind of a question to think about. This is all totally business. It's not the fun stuff we've been talking about. But at the state board level, as we go down the road of continuing to improve licensing and so forth, we're seeing a lot of inconsistencies with our teachers and the positions that they have, the licenses that they hold, and the degrees that they have, and they're kind of all over the place. So if there's ever a group we could be part of, or maybe a little task force to look at resolving some of those inconsistencies and simplifying the system, that would help. With the new stipend that's available to some special ed teachers, it's made us analyze it, and it's almost like we've got a little bit of everything all over the place. And I don't know exactly what to suggest there, but just we would like to be involved if there are any of those discussions that go on.
Okay, Superintendent, I'm going to ask Ms. Lorraine to make a note of that, make sure that goes on our agenda, on our leadership, so we can explore that a little bit. We've been concerned, and we've heard this, but we need to act, so it's going to be a little bigger than us. I'm sure we're going to have to roll our sleeves up together and try to move a betterment forward, so thank you. Anything else? That's all. We don't have any reason to go into executive session. Superintendent, want to thank you for your hospitality and your staff and a great lunch. Want to reach out to the advisory committee here. Thank you for your service. Looking forward to hearing from you. Chair Harp, looking forward to this next year, and I'll give you my contact information. We very much want to hear from you. For me personally, we have a question or comment?
I have a comment, not a question as presented earlier. I wanted to share with you why I wanted to be on this advisory.
Okay, very good.
Advisory committee. Being a professor at Weber State University for 30 years and being the department chair and the senior project coordinator for over 300 senior projects and graduated about 2,000 students over the 30 years. I know the characteristics that a student needs to be successful as an engineer. And these kids that come to us as freshmen, a lot of them don't have those characteristics. And I'm here because of the excitement I have felt on this council with the school, USDB, and they're trying to develop their personalities. Not so much, I'm not as concerned about the skills, because if a student has a great personality and a desire to learn, they can succeed at anything. And I see some students coming in at Weber State that just don't have those personality traits to be successful, and you watch them just kind of, either they'll blossom or they'll drop out. And to be part of that on this council with these young children and volunteering for STEM workshops for USDB, I'm thrilled to see the excitement generated with these young children and how it's going to carry through for their careers, whatever they chose to do. And I wanted to thank the superintendent for the opportunity to serve on this council.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you, the advisory committee, and we welcome your input. We're getting really close to wrapping this up. Board members, thank you for a couple days out of your life. It seems like I can't even remember what day of the week it is. So hopefully somebody will remind me or point what way home is. But thank you for your service and your willingness to come today and serve in this capacity. I get a lot of gratification from rubbing shoulders with USDB and staff and the faculty, and so thank you for what you do. Any questions or comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn? I'm not seeing any. Do we have a motion? Board Member Reedy, what?
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting is unanimous. Thanks again. Take care. Be safe.